Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to share with you something that I absolutely love, which most people wouldn't think you can ferment, but it's actually fermented potatoes. Now if you enjoy potato wedges, then fermented potato wedges are an absolute game changer on a few levels. A, for your health. Potatoes are part of the nightshade family. A lot of people are not okay with them, they have digestive upset when they eat them, but when you ferment the potatoes first, for 3 days in a 3% salt brine, then a lot of the starch gets broken down, so they're actually much easier to digest. The other really interesting thing is if you cook starchy foods with oil at high temperature, there's a chemical called acrylamide that gets formed. Now this is not good news. It's linked with increased cancer risk and other things. And if you just do your standard potato wedges with oil and cook them in the oven, you are going to get some acrylamide formation. But if you ferment your potatoes for 3 days in a 3% salt brine, you get zero acrylamide formed. So that is absolutely worth doing, in my opinion. From a flavour point of view, the fermented potato wedges are absolutely delicious. They're really crisp and they don't ever stick to your baking tray, and they are just the most delicious things ever. So what you need to do to make your fermented potato, and I'm doing them as wedge shapes, but you can do them whatever shape you like. So you need to have some potatoes, obviously. Try and get organic if you can, and you keep the skins on. Just give them a little wash, because there's valuable probiotics and fibre in the skins, so keep the skins on. You'll also need a jar to put your potatoes or your wedges in. I've just got this big one, which works really well for us because there's quite a lot of us here and we eat a lot of potato wedges, but if it's just for yourself, you can use a smaller jar. I have bay leaves in the garden, so I love bay leaves, so I'm going to put a couple of bay leaves in my jar. I've also got some rosemary, so any herbs will do. You don't even need to use herbs, but I have them in the garden. So this is rosemary, so I'm going to put some rosemary in as well. Another of my favourite ingredients, garlic. So put in a couple of smashed cloves of garlic, and again you don't need to cut them, just give it a bit of a bash and put them in. So 2 or 3, depends how many you like. If you like spicy, then what else you can do is to put some chilli flakes in. And again, what this does is it flavours the brine and it also flavours the potatoes. So a little bit of chilli in. Next, what we're going to do is just to start to fill the jar with the potatoes. Now, the other really interesting thing about potatoes is they naturally sink in the brine. If you're fermenting any other veg, they tend to float up. But potatoes very conveniently just stay down. So I've already chopped up my potatoes into wedges. I'm just going to put them in the jar. Again, when you taste these, they just taste fantastic. Right, I'm going to cut up a few more because I want to have my jar about 3/4 filled. And we actually, once I started making these, I just don't do them any other way now because they're just so good. So again, what you're doing is you're making them easier on the digestion and you're making them more nutritious. And yes, okay, you don't actually have probiotic benefits with potato wedges because obviously we're going to cook them in a hot oven. But the thing is, the fermentation breaks down lots of stuff. As I said, the starches, and you don't get acrylamide formed, so that's absolutely worth doing it. The only thing is you do need to leave them for 3 days at room temperature, so you have to be a wee bit organised. So if you want to have delicious potato wedges for the weekend, then you have to do them, say, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever. Right, so that's probably enough. Okay, so I'll put in my wedges here. I'll put these 2 in as well. Again, you can cut the potatoes just into chunks if you want to do that. And you keep the skins on because that's really valuable fibre, and you get probiotics, good bacteria on the skin too. Right, next up is a really important thing is we're going to make up a salt brine. Normally if I'm fermenting carrots or anything, I use a 2% brine, but for potatoes we're using 3%. So what that means is it's 30 grams of salt in a litre of water. I tend to use a fine Himalayan salt. Any quality salt will work. Try not to use table salt, it's just pure sodium, and there's usually caking agents and stuff in it as well, which is not ideal. So I've measured out my 30 grams of salt. I'm going to put it in my bowl. And then what I'm going to do is just put out of my filter jug. And again, if you've got tap water, tends to have chlorine in it, so if you have any kind of filter jug, then use that instead, because chlorine is antibacterial and we don't want to kill off our wee bacteria. right? So make sure that your salt is dissolved. Just give it a good stir. Make sure it's dissolved. You can use a bit of warm water if you want to make sure it's properly dissolved. Right, so once you've done that, so again, Himalayan pink salt, and you don't want to use big lumps of salt, you want fine salt and it dissolves easier. So then we're just going to pour a brine over the potatoes. Just make up a little bit more, put a touch more salt in. I'll just top that up with a bit more salt. Right, so you've filled in, you've got your brine up to the top, and then all you need to do is just to clip your jar shut. These clip top jars are great for fermenting because you can clip them totally shut, and if there's any brine escapes it can get out through that rubber seal there. So that's the first step done, and that's the prep stage for fermented potato wedges. So now what I need to do is to leave these to sit for 3 days at room temperature, and what will happen is the brine will start to go a bit cloudy, and you'll get some bubbles at the top, so you can see that just means then that the fermentation is proceeding normally. So what we'll do is we're going to leave this for 3 days at room temperature in my kitchen, and I'll be back in 3 days to show you what the next step is, how to prepare them and how to bake them in the oven. And seriously, once you've tried these, you just won't do them any other way. They're absolutely delicious. So I'll see you back in 3 days. Right, here we are, 3 days later. My potato wedges have been fermenting in my 3% salt brine. And you can see that the brine's gone all cloudy, which is great. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to drain them. And it smells all nice and garlicky because of all the garlic and herbs that were in it. Right, so I'm going to drain them all out. Now what I actually tend to do is I just tend to reuse the garlic and the herbs and just get another batch on the go. But what I do with these is just dry them off slightly and start to put them in a single layer just on a lightly oiled baking tray. And then these are going to go into the oven, a hot oven at about 200 to 220 degrees C. I'm going to drizzle them with a little bit of oil, and I've just got cold pressed rapeseed oil, or olive oil is good as well. You don't need to bother seasoning these though, because remember that they've actually been sitting in that salt brine for 3 days, and they'll have lovely garlic flavour and the chilli flavour as well. So just gently give them a wee dry off. Now the wonderful thing is about these is that they don't stick to the tray, because a lot of the starch has come out of the potatoes into the water essentially, which just makes them the most delicious, crispy, lovely wedges that you can eat. So I'm just going to do them like that and put them in a wee single layer, keep them nice and single, then they just crisp up really nicely. So I'm just going to carry on doing this. And they're going in the oven, and preheat the oven, always preheat the oven if you put them into a nice hot oven. Then they just get nicely crisped. And then what I tend to do is I turn them over halfway through cooking. So roughly about 30 to 40 minutes, just depends how hot your oven is. So we're not seasoning them again with any more salt. I'm just going to put a little drizzle of rapeseed oil on the top, and I'm just dabbing off the rest of the liquid, so I don't want them to be too wet. I'll just fill my tray up. Right, there we have it. Right, okay, so I'm just going to put a little drizzle of oil. Don't need much. Right, a little drizzle of oil on my wedges, and then there we are. So they're going in the oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. Right, I think that's my potato wedges ready. I've turned them over once, so that's about 25 minutes or so. Obviously it depends how big you cut them, how long it takes them to cook, but it's roughly about between, say, 20 and 30 minutes, okay? Ooh. Look at these gorgeous, light and crispy. Look, and they don't even stick to your tray, which is just absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enjoy these with some of my homemade Hawthorn ketchup, which I have here, and this is just the most delicious thing ever. So once you've tried these, I can guarantee you won't go back to just making normal potato wedges, as these are absolutely delicious and they're way better for you too. Oh, that's a bit too hot. With a very lovely and crispy, actually leave it hot. But you really need to give these a go. They're absolutely delicious.